Welcome to the Young Trustee Information Session. Thanks to everybody who's, reads the DSG emails, goes on Facebook, coming here, that's great. So thanks, so just kind of like tee this up. So I'm Annie. I am going to be the chair of the Young Trustee Nominating Committee, and so that's a committee of 12 people or so who will ultimately be reading applications if you choose to apply. We conduct interviews, and then we ultimately select finalists. Basically, it's just 12 people from all around campus. But so I will be the one who will be collecting your applications. I'll be ready to answer any questions that you have. I think my name will be on my email and my name will be on the ultimate application, so you guys can feel free to ask any questions throughout. I was on the YTNC last year, so I've kind of been through this before, so I'm more than happy to answer any questions. But as you guys are seeing that Dr. Dell has passed around, Young Trustee has definitely changed a little bit this year, just in the process. In the past, there's a lot of, some problems that people had made us aware of, so we definitely tried to change those this year. But so hopefully we're hoping to have a lot more applicants and then a much better process. So we're also really excited to have two of our current Young Trustees here. Chris Brown, who you were the 2013 one, right?
Yeah.
And then Anna Knight, who's the 2015 one. And so they're both serving 3-year terms on the board. Anna is in her observation year, so the first year that you have is your observation year. And then for this year's slate of candidates, we're going to have it's going to be a 2-year term, so you'll have 1 year as an observer and then 1 year as a full voting member. They never do actual votes, right?
There are actual votes.
Oh, there are some actual votes. Okay, well, Anna right now can't actually vote, but Chris can. And so Chris is in his last year, so somebody will be kind of assuming the position as he leaves. So, so Dr. Dell, anything you want to add?
I have a few things to add.
Yeah, there you go.
So the purpose of this session is to give you information, right, Anna?
Yeah.
Okay, so let me start out by saying a few things, and then I'm sure Chris and Anna have things they'd like to say. First of all, I appreciate your interest in being a Young Trustee. I always like to give a little history. You may think, oh, Young Trustees, every school has those. Actually, they don't. Very few schools have such things as Young Trustees. A few have student trustees, but not Young Trustees. And let me tell you how this all happened. Many years ago, when Terry Sanford was president, in a very different era, when a lot of the trustees at that time were, let us just say, had been around for a long time. And he said, it'd really be good if we had some people in the room that had closer experience with that of the students at Duke. And so he said, why don't we have some young trustees? And thus was born the idea, well, here's how you could do it. And you'd have the graduate professional students pick one, and the undergraduate body pick one. And so thus was born the idea of having young trustees. And they weren't student trustees because that wasn't the point. It wasn't that they wanted someone to represent the students any more than they wanted other trustees to represent the business school or the arts and sciences, because they wanted trustees who had, if you will, youth on their side, that were closer in age to the experience of college students. So when someone's elected as a young trustee, they in essence are elected as a trustee. They serve as a trustee. And Anna and Chris can tell you about their experience. From my perspective, the trustees treat Anna and Chris as if they're trustees. They don't treat them as if they're something different. So, therefore, when you think about becoming a young trustee, it's really, what would it be like to be a trustee of Duke University? Because that's what's going to be asked of whoever is elected. The things I passed out, these are a condensed version of a document we use when the full board is thinking about who should be a full trustee, an old trustee, if you will. And trustees generally serve 6-year terms, renewable once, or can serve up to 12 years. Young trustees, as Annie said, serve a little different. And I won't go into the reasons for that, but I'm happy to explain if you wish. But the things that are required of a full trustee are also required of a young trustee. The things that I cut off that list were things like philanthropic ability. That's really not a consideration of a young trustee, but it is of a regular trustee. The first thing you'll see there is broad thinker. One of the things that this new, and I tip my hat to Annie and Kezra and others on DSG, that sought to maybe change up the process a little bit. One of the things that's confusing about this whole business is, I remember elections in the past where I'd open the Chronicle and I'd read about some young trustee's campaign to be a young trustee, and they'd say, well, if I'm elected a young trustee, I'm going to help change the housing system at Duke, or I'm going to, get tailgate back. I liked it the way it was before. Well, not exactly, because once you're a trustee, you don't have an agenda. Your agenda is the whole university. You're a fiduciary of the whole university. So therefore, it's important, just like the regular trustees, that you have a breadth of vision, that you can think about all the different aspects of an issue that might come before the board. So that's important, that you have that breadth of vision, that you're comfortable with that. The next thing would be, there's some interest that you might have in issues in higher education. Duke is, been around for a while. It's a major research university, but it's also in a group of schools that does a certain thing in the sort of higher education world. Do you have interest in those issues? That's important, because that's what trustees are asked to. There was an event today, Anna was there, I know, where one of our former board chairs, it was an event to celebrate DUMAC, which is our investment firm. And one of the panelists was a former board chair of the Duke board, Bob Steele. And he said, there's 4 things about a board that you got to pay attention to. It's like his religion about boards. One is you're interested in strategic issues. You're interested in picking good leadership. You're interested in monitoring the strategy and the leadership. And 4, you get out of the way. So boards don't, in a way, do things. They sit up above the people who are doing things. So the president, executive vice president, people like that, they monitor what they're doing. They get reports. They ask questions. So that's, again, having knowledge of higher education, knowledge of Duke. The next thing is on that list is really, they're all important, but that's really important. And I think particularly for young trustees, these 2 folks tomorrow will be sitting in a meeting with a whole bunch of other people, about 30 other people, from all different walks of life, but all of pretty high accomplishment. And what you want is people who can step into that world and speak their minds, which they do, with some independence of thought, right? So if there's some issue in front of the board, that they'll have a point of view that they're happy to express. And then, as things progress, somebody said they don't take votes, as things progress toward a decision point, that the trustees have the ability to, whatever they thought or whatever opinion they had, they can coalesce together and come to a group decision pretty easily. And this board has a great culture in doing that, even through the hardest times that I've seen. There have been some, challenging times. If you think about the financial downturn, how we're going to deal with that, think about the cross incident, that wasn't an easy time for this board. So having the independent of mind, but also that ability to work with a group of people and understand and respect the sort of team approach. And then the last thing is, trustees are asked to represent the university. So if you're really interested in this, you got to think, well, that'd be fun. There's events all around the country. Where are you living now, Chris?
I'm in New York now.
Yeah, so it's a New York event, and Chris would no doubt be called upon to attend and talk to people and talk about the university. So those are, I think, 4 good things to think about. As you see, none of them have to do with any agenda that you might have of what you think would make Duke better. In a way, the board hires a president to think about how to make Duke better. And then the board monitors the strategy that is agreed upon between the board and the leadership of the university. So it's a very interesting kind of dynamic. This is true of all good boards all over the country. Corporate boards function the same way. So I'm going to stop there. Let me see if there's any questions on that before I turn it over to the young trustees. Nothing?
No.
Nothing from you?
Nothing.
All right.
All right. Just by way of quick introduction, I know I'm an old guy now, but I graduated my name is Chris Brown. I graduated in 2013. I was a econ major, and I did the certificate in energy and environment studies. And while I was on campus, I was involved in kind of spots all over. Duke Student Government was a big portion of that involvement, but I also wrote for the Chronicle. I was a P. Wild backpack leader, and was involved in DPS and DPS Connect and all sorts of stuff. So we kind of fostered a great love for this place and all the many different experiences that students at Duke have. And right now, after graduating, I went and worked for McKinsey in Houston, Texas for 2 years, following that energy and environmental sciences background. And now I'm, as mentioned, in New York, working for a holding company.
Hi, I think I actually know a lot of you guys here. I'm Anna Knight, for those of you who don't know me. I was elected by you guys in 2015. I, in undergrad, was a biomedical engineering major with minors in Chinese and chemistry, so I did do some time in Trinity. I think I took a chem lecture in here one time, actually, like a recitation section. But anyway, I was involved with a lot of things as well. I was involved mostly with engineering student government, which was kind of a bit of a twist on the path to young trustee-ness, from what I understand. But also involved with a lot of other things on campus as well. But after graduation, I'm actually still here. I am a first-year PhD student. ACES says I will graduate in 2022, so I will be here forever. Yeah, it takes like 7 or 8 years in my department generally. But yeah, that's so I've only been to one meeting, and as mentioned, I cannot vote yet, but next year I will. So.
We can, what would be helpful for you guys? I think that's the intention of us being here. Brief descriptions of what it's been like to be a young trustee.
Do you want to step through very briefly what the election process is
I can
first?
start with the whole application process, because that's kind of a big one. So yeah, so I probably should have started with that one. But in terms of the application process, the application is going to go out on Monday. It's, I think, 5 questions. We've narrowed it down. It's much shorter than it has been in past years. Each question, like in the past years, it's been like 10 pages single-spaced. This year, it's just going to be 5 questions. Each are 500 words or less. You can write 500 words. You can write 250 words. We don't care, as long as it's substantive. Then you're also going to have the opportunity with that. You're going to submit it. I think it's done through Qualtrics, right, this year. So we'll send out an email to the whole student body, just like you probably got an email about joining the YTNC. It comes through Dr. Riddell's office. You're gonna be able to go on, work on your application, send it in. From then on, you'll also be able to send in your resume with that, and then you'll be able to have somebody submit a resume, or not a resume, sorry, a character reference, or kind of a letter of recommendation. That could be a peer, that could be a professor, somebody you work for. They could be somebody who can just speak to who you are as a person, and that person will have to submit it to me, not you. We really want to know that kind of this person can say genuine things about you. In addition to that, so what'll happen is that application will be sent out. You'll have all of winter break to work on it. I think it's going to be due somewhere around like January 5th or 6th. So that's actually a week before we come back from winter break. So it'll mostly be done through winter break and then next week. And then after that, what will happen is the YTNC goes, they read through all of your applications. They will be blind, so you will not be hindered or anything by not knowing anybody or by knowing a lot of people on the Young Trustee Nominating Committee. So they'll read those blind. From there, we will offer interviews depending on the number of applications and how good they are. Everybody could be offered an interview, or at minimum 12 people will be offered an interview. It just kind of depends. And then we will go through, and then kind of immediately thereafter, so I think the weekend of interviews will be like the 16th and the 17th, that's MLK weekend. We will be doing interviews. Interviews are usually around 45 minutes long. You'll ask, a number of different questions to kind of like see what you're interested in, what you're like as a person, how you kind of work through different problem-solving processes. And then from there, 2 to 4 people will be selected as finalists. So you have like the application phase, the semifinalist stage, which is the interview stage, and then you have the finalist stage. If you're chosen as one of the 2 to 4 people who is a finalist, then you will then from there on have a 2-week-long campaign period, and you can campaign, you can do all of the kind of getting endorsements. The Chronicle will probably contact you to interview you and kind of go with the editorial board, and then I think it's February, I want to say it's the 5th this year. We will have, I think it's a 2-day long voting period, so it starts at noon on, do you know the exact date? I think we have that exact date.
It's a Tuesday.
It's the first February of Tuesday. We'll start voting, we'll open at 12 p.m. and then it will go a full 24 hours till 12 p.m. the next day. And then at 12 p.m., we'll kind of go through the votes, see who won. All of the finalists will get calls, and then of course the person who wins will be the young trustee. This year it definitely is a little different. I kind of noted about this, but just kind of like explicitly say it. In the past, the young trustee has been a 3-year appointment. It's kind of changed now, just kind of in discussions and roles and stuff. That we have, this year it's going to be a 2-year appointment, so you'll have 1 year as an observer, 1 year as a full voting member, and then it alternates, so then like next year, in the 2017 election, the person who wins will get a 3-year appointment. In the 2018 election, the person who wins will get a 2-year appointment, and that's because we're switching off who gets 2-year appointments and who gets 3-year appointments with the Graduate and Professional Student Council, so they have a young trustee as well, and so that person will get the 3-year, and then the year after that they'll get the 2-year, and the undergrads will get the 3-year. So that's kind of how that's working. So are there any questions just before I can kind of switch it over to Chris and Anna about just the application in general?
One thing I'd add, I see a member of the Young Trustee Nominating Committee is here. Any other members here from the nominating committee? Yeah, great. Griffin, right?
Yes.
Yeah. One thing, and I'll tip again my hat to Annie and Kezra and other members of DSG who really rewrote how this whole process works, is they really wanted to make both the nominating committee and also the election very transparent and open to students well beyond DSG. Certainly DSG students are involved, but there's other students too. And I don't know how many of the nominating committee have DSG connections. Maybe.
Just me.
How many?
I'm the only one.
You're the only one?
Yeah,
Okay.
and I'm a non-voting
Out of
member,
12,
so.
something like
Yeah,
that?
so it's definitely a little different if you
It's
guys
very different.
have
So-
been annoyed in the past at how much DSG kind of dominates it. It's definitely not the same this year. And the way also that it works, just to keep this in mind, is that the YTNC is when we receive all the applications and after we've kind of gone over the blind reading process and we've given all the names, each member of the YTNC has the opportunity to say a conflict of interest with each person. So we have 3 different types of conflict of interest. It's a major conflict of interest, moderate conflict of interest, and minor conflict of interest. And minor conflict of interest is kind of like they can still vote on you. If they're moderate, they can still talk, but they can't vote on you. And if it's major, so if you really know a member of the YTNC well, they will not be able to vote on you. They'll not be able to talk about you. And that's to kind of give every single person on who's applying an equal opportunity. Just because say that I was able to vote if I wasn't the chair and I'm on DSG and you're on DSG, and I've had a lot of interactions with you where I've seen that you're a really good leader and you can have principles to demonstrate to me that you're a good young trustee. I wouldn't be able to call upon those experiences. You'd kind of have to prove that to the rest of the committee. So everybody really has an equal opportunity, a clean slate. It doesn't matter what you're in, what you've been involved in throughout your time at Duke. You're really going to have the opportunity to show us what you have.
I think all those things make sense. And since my freshman year was the first year that it was an election, so the fact that you're continuing to evolve the process is just better for Duke and Duke students in this election. And that switching of terms, I'll say, is the first example of something that, as a reminder that the role of the young trustee is the entire university. And so it's the graduate students, there are more graduate students than there are undergraduate students, and keep that. Their experiences are important as we consider kind of next steps for Duke, so kind of only fair.
So are you getting what you wanted out of this session, folks?
Really? You're doing a really great job.
Yeah.
Well, I'm a junior, so I'm not going to be running this year, but I'm just curious.
You could if you
Why
wanted
not?
to, though.
You could.
Freshmen can run.
I'm not going to run this year, or maybe next year. But do you have to be involved in, like, when you say leadership, does it mean leadership in terms, like, I'm assuming, like, you were on ESG, you're on DSG, like, do you have to be involved in the student government, or could it be leadership in, like, other forms, like more like grassroots leadership?
Yeah.
I think absolutely it can be. It's really, it's all about how you present it, and if you can convince the Young Trustee Nominating Committee that what you did was a strong enough show that you have those skills and you won't be afraid to speak in a boardroom, then I absolutely don't think there's a requirement in any way, shape, or form that you have to sit on anything that has the word student government at the end.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, as Richard said right from the start, it's breadth of thinking, and I think breadth of experience at Duke is important so that you understand, so that you can understand how different issues will impact different parts of the university community. But there's no requirements at all.
I think the one thing I will add, and that what shocked me most about my first meeting, is that when I think a lot of it comes a little bit from in undergrad, where you kind of focus on, everyone knows the Duke bubble, but the Duke bubble is even bigger than you think it is, and that when you sit on the board, you are thinking about more than just the undergrad experience, or even the undergrads and the professors and the administrators you have to contact with. It expands much further than that, so you need to be prepared to be able to think critically about things you might have, like, I have never taken anything in law or in, the School of Public Policy and all that stuff, and I still have to be able to think critically about those things, and so you need to make sure you think you're prepared to learn about anything that has the word Duke on it, and that's a little bit of mental gymnastics, but I think it's very worth learning about it. But it's not just an undergrad issue, although we both happen to sit on the undergraduate education committee, but
Yeah.
there are tons of other committees as well.
Yes, and maybe that's we can answer that question too, how the board's structured and what the different subcommittee roles are. Did we answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
And just to pick up on, you said you're a junior, you're not going to, for whatever reason, you're not going to. I'm pretty sure the history of this position is, it got set up originally as any undergraduate could run to be a young trustee. But I'm pretty sure that the history is, it's always been a senior graduating who became, like Anna graduated, she's still here, but she's no longer an undergraduate. There's no rule that says you can't be elected as a junior or a sophomore or a freshman. So.
And there was a semi-finalist in 2014 who was a current junior, so it's definitely possible. And just kind of turn on the head of the worry about student government, because I know that the current 3 trustees or young trustees all had to do with a form of student government. That's definitely something that is not necessary at all. You'll notice on the form that Dr. Adele handed out, we really just want to see critical thinking skills. I think that's definitely something we got. The YTNC the other day was trained about when Dr. Adele sat down with us and was saying, like, these are the things that the trustees look for. This is what the young trustee kind of should possess. And so a lot of times you can indicate in an interview, the people who have student government experience, they've been able to do that, but that's definitely not a necessity in any way, shape, or form.
One of the things our current board chair is fond of saying, and these two have heard it, that as far as he knows, there's never been a young trustee who became a trustee. In other words, after you served for 2 or 3 years, then you went off and did something, and then you came back as a 12-year trustee. And I think his goal is somehow, during his tenure, to bring on people, maybe it'll happen with Chris or Anna, or maybe one of you, that serves as a young trustee, and then they come back. So I think the more the qualities that make a good trustee also are part of what's a young trustee, increases our chances that that'll happen.
Here's to hoping for Chris Lamb. He's on the BOV at Sanford. He was the young
Is
trustee.
he? Okay.
So
Well,
there's one person.
So the pipeline. He's in
Yeah,
the
he's on his way. So yeah.
I have a question. Annie, you mentioned that you cut down the application from 10 pages single space to 5 questions, which I think is great. But I'm curious, what did you guys decide to cut?
Well, it was more so that the expectations changed, so we just reviewed the final thing for this current application, and I can't exactly recall what we had on the old application, but we cut down to the questions that really will cut through to, like, your experiences. They're all relevant, like, we're gonna get the information we need from these, so we're disseminating that on Monday, right? Yeah, and so you guys will see those on Monday, but I think it's definitely that, one, we definitely didn't say it's 10-page single-spaced, and that these are the really relevant questions, and this is stuff we really want to know. There's really no, like, fat to trim.
Okay. Do you guys still have the requirement that the applications can be published?
Oh, yeah, so that's something that has changed a little bit. If you were so that was a really good suggestion. So the application that you submit, your written application, you're allowed to do with it what you will. Something that has changed this year, just based on an experience that we had last year, is that every single interview is going to be recorded. And I'm going to record them. It's going to be, I will have a 45-minute recording of whatever you say in the interview. You will be able, so after the interview, say that you're chosen as a finalist or you're not chosen as a finalist, you will be able to email me for that interview, and I'll just send it over to you. The only thing about that is that you are not allowed to release that. That is just for you. So if you're like questioning kind of, if you want to see where you went wrong or just kind of like see what your answers were, you can listen to that and kind of listen through it. That's just kind of a way for you to kind of review yourself. It's not for anything else. We would just ask that you do not disseminate that out to the student body to say like, these are the questions that they asked in the Young Trustee interview. So it's just for you. And then on election day, those will be destroyed. I will destroy them. So they will not be like widely available for forever. It's like, so you have the period from at the end of the semifinalist stage through election day to ask me for that interview, and I will give it to you. But on election day, I'm just deleting them.
Is there a limit to the number of like recommendations a candidate can attach to this application?
I don't think we've decided upon that. I would say one is one, you should aim for one. We really use those as supplemental the same way that admissions uses the one that they require as a, supplement to your application. If somebody has something really profound to say about you, we'll see it there. But, if you think that multiple then maybe would really do you well, then I guess you could email me and we could figure something out.
I was wondering if you could talk about the structure of the board and the subcommittees.
Sure. So there's the Board of Trustees that sits above the entire university, including the undergraduate and graduate schools and the health system. That as a young trustee, not only will you be, your non-voting and voting member there on that Duke University board, but you also have membership on 2 subcommittees. So they'll generally be.
Can we name them all?
Well, that would be a fun game. Let's play it later. I don't know, how have we described, do they have classifications? Some are like, one is focused on more your university experience, immediate university affairs, and another section will be more focused on governance. So the 2 that I sit on are undergraduate education and the audit, risk, and compliance committee. But other examples of experiential university experience committees are academic affairs, business and finance, facilities and environment,
institutional advancement.
Yeah.
There's also a whole committee devoted to selecting the honorary degrees given out at graduation each year. We're probably missing some to that.
Trustee membership.
Trustee membership selection.
So your days are packed with meetings going from, and how a typical weekend will be structured is that tomorrow, Friday morning, you will start with a session with all the trustees at the board level, with the president, get executive session updates in that manner, and then you all break out to your first set of subcommittee meetings. Then it's about 3 hours. That's when a lot of, if there's someone with DSG or student or subcommittee board rep experience, that's when students and faculty members from throughout the university will come participate in subcommittee meetings. They're more focused on, a lot of these are generally more focused on discussion because you have a lot more perspectives in the room. Some are procedural and you need to accomplish. So the subcommittees are designed to basically have focused conversations or focused deliverables with people who know those areas best. So you have your morning session of subcommittees, you have your lunchtime session of subcommittees. So on to the next meeting, and then you then move into your afternoon. The whole board reconvenes on Friday afternoon, meets for the remainder of the afternoon. We might get a break for probably the time to get back to the hotel, then you're then into generally a dinner or one of the trustee events that Dr. Riddell highlighted. And then Saturday morning you meet for most of the day as a full board, no subcommittees.
And you're never thrown into like discussions blind. Dr. Riddell's office very kindly puts together both an overall agenda with lots of supplemental material. I think one time it was like 500 pages or something. But that gets sent out and you're expected to read that as preparation for the main committee, as well as there are ones for each specific subcommittee as well. So that can be, so like for undergrad education, we'll get articles and material related to what we will be discussing, so we can come in with a pre-formed opinion and ideas.
The overall structure, I think, of how it overall function is that the subcommittees that Chris and Anna talked about is where most of the, if you will, the work of the board does. Something needs approval, we're building a new building, the budget needs to be approved. That sort of oversight work gets done in committees, and then it's all brought to the full board and approved generally in a consent calendar that lasts about a minute. Then the full board meeting is focused on strategic discussions of larger issues. For instance, this weekend, from time to time, the board wants to just focus on one school and say, all right, where is that school? Where are they in the rankings? What is their strategic direction? What are the challenges that school is having? This weekend, it's the Nicholas School. Other times, the board gets interested in a topic like information technology. What's going on at Duke with privacy, with data governance, and with online education. So there'll be a whole session just exploring the strategic implications of information technology. And that's generally what happens in the full board.
You don't go into your first even board meeting cold. My very first weekend, I took all day Thursday, and all of the new trustees were we had another jam-packed day where we learned basically trusteeship 101, but everything from how is a university different from a business to, what are specific current issues in higher education, and all these. You get a training day too, which was helpful.
Yeah, crash course in everything.
Yes, everything, literally everything.
Yeah, and I guess to build on that, kind of not just what your day-to-day experience is like, but what's expected of young trustees for kind of their entire tenure. And I'll tie that into that point that Richard mentioned of interest in issues of higher education and how they relate to Duke. And so it's not just crash course in all things Duke, what's going on here, but regularly we're constantly consolidating and circulating articles on from the Chronicle of Higher Education, from the New York Times, what's going on in the higher ed space, what's the most recent thinking about this, so that everyone's staying up to speed. You're expected, I think, to read, to process this, to think about experiences at Duke. There have been many instances over the last 2.5 years where I've had, set up phone calls with other trustees or administrators in between meetings to discuss some of these questions or issues that are arising, whether it's current events or just broader strategic things that want to make sure we want to get clarity on or understand where the different schools or university and how we're thinking about it. So it's a commitment for the next 2 or 3 years that Duke will and higher education will operate or will occupy a significant portion of your kind of mental space, which is exciting and fun, but it's also it's a big commitment that is worth thinking about.
Any other questions?
I wanted to note that Laura Brown is here with us. She's a member of the staff of the Office of the University Secretary and helps make the meetings happen in a big way.
I literally would not be here without her.
All right, so if there's no more questions, you guys are, I guess, free to go. If you have any questions like leading up, you can feel free to email me. You can just search, like, my email is anna.adair@duke.edu, or you can just like search on the Duke directory. And then also, we will be disseminating the application on Monday. Yes. And it'll get sent out to the whole student body, so you guys will see more information there.